Hello, I'm Dango Rose. Welcome to the Mountaineer Podcast, where everybody's listening. The Mountaineer brings you the latest news of the Peak to Peak region, in print, online, through our podcast, social media, and special publications. Now, listen in to the latest news of the area with our local journalists.
Welcome to the Mountaineer Podcast. We have huge news coming your way today. Our first issue of Caribou Current is out Thursday, February 5th, today. You can find it inside the Mountaineer and at newsstands all across Boulder County, Gilpin County, and even down into Golden. Really, really excited. And because of that, we're going to bring you an episode exclusively of Caribou Current content. Before we get started, here's a quick word from today's sponsor, Eldora Mountain. Skip the epic traffic on I-70 and head to Eldora for good vibes all season long. Eldora is your go-to spot for nonstop winter fun, with great local skiing and riding, plus slopeside DJs and an après music series. Don't miss the Full Moon Ski Tour, the Timbers Rail Jam, or the morning uphill grind. Get all the details and check out weekly events at eldora.com. See you on the mountain. I have our fearless editor, Jesse Gray, on to chat about the issue today, everything that's inside of it, and then we're going to dive into our feature segment, an exclusive interview with the prolific horror author, Stephen Graham Jones, who is also a Boulder resident. We featured him in this issue, and we're going to bring you just a little snippet of his interview with one of our freelance reporters, Toni Tresca. Let's get into the issue. Welcome, Jesse. Really, really excited to be sitting here with you today talking about this. Feels pretty insane to finally have this print product. As of recording this, we don't have it yet. We haven't seen it, but it's been a long time coming. This is 6 months of work, a really, really hard sprint to the finish line, and I think we have a product we're pretty proud of. How are you feeling about the print?
I mean, excited doesn't quite cover it. I feel like a little kid on Christmas Eve who just can't get to sleep. I want to hold this thing. I want to see the stacks of it in our office. I want to see it out in the world. I want to see people reading it because there's so much good stuff in here. And as you've said, we've sunk so much time into working on this thing, and it's really been a labor of love. So we're just really chomping at the bit to see this thing out in the wild.
Yeah. And as of today, we will be able to see it. You will be able to see it. For anybody who hasn't been tuned in up until this point, Caribou Current is our new free arts and culture monthly. We will be publishing on the first Thursday of every single month. It will be inserted inside the Mountaineer, but it'll also be on news racks, like I said, across the county. We're going to be covering everything in the peak to peak, down through the foothills of Boulder, Golden, and up into Lyons as well. Music, arts, entertainment, events, food, anything that you can think of will be in these issues. So as we kind of build up to our feature segment today with Stephen Graham Jones, I thought it would be kind of nice to give our listeners a bit of an editorial preview. What can we expect to see in the issue, the first issue of Caribou Current this month?
Well, we've got all sorts of great stuff in our debut issue. In the music section, we've got stories on M. Sage. We've got a new column that we're debuting called Under the Influence with a band called Precocious Neophyte. We've got the top 10 best-selling new vinyl releases in Boulder. And then over in the world of literature and books, we've got a profile on Stephen Graham Jones. We've got a great community story that's a profile on a local shuttle driver with a really eclectic taste in music and the playlist that he shares with his writers. We've also got a preview of what's coming up at the Friday Night Weird Film Series at the Dairy Arts Center. In the food section, we've got a profile on Crosscut Pizza and the great work they're doing up in Nederland. We've also got a great photo essay on the CU Hill Jam for the winter sports enthusiasts. And then all the events and concerts you can expect to make it out to in February. You'll also find online, more concerts, more events, things we just simply didn't have space for in the print. We've got all the space we want online. You'll always find more at cariboucurrent.com.
Yeah, concerts and events are kind of, I would call it like our bread and butter. I think our concert and event listings bring a lot of value to our readers. We have our finger on the pulse here. There's very little that's going on in the Peak to Peak or in Boulder that is worth your time that we won't be covering. So before we get into the feature segment, I wanted to highlight a couple of those events. So Jesse, what is the one concert in our listings that is can't miss for February?
For me, that's got to be Midwife at Chautauqua Auditorium on February 10th. This is a show that you'll be able to read about online at cariboucurrent.com in our event listings. This is the music project of Madeline Johnston, who has been recording under the name Midwife for the past several years. She came up in the DIY music scene around here. She was an early fixture at Rhinoceropolis, which was the big DIY space that suffered a fire many years ago. But she describes her music as heaven metal, which is to say very ethereal, beautiful songs about devastation and darkness. It's very guitar driven, very gorgeous. It almost just sort of aches with all of the negative space and just quiet, minimal arrangements that will just rip your heart out. And she's playing with a couple bands called Amulets and Sunswept at the Chautauqua Auditorium, as I said, which, if you haven't been there, is really just one of the premier listening spaces in the region. So this is going to really be a special one.
Yeah, for sure. Heaven metal is such an insane juxtaposition. Definitely piques my interest. On the event side, one of the events that I think really stands out this month is the 25th anniversary gala for the Nederland Community Library. It's gonna be a blast, genuinely. They have wine and cheese tastings. They're gonna have live music from Mountain Reverb and a silent auction for rare books. So if that's your thing, this is going to be the spot. It's going to be a huge, huge community event. You'll also have the chance to meet Netherlands' very first poet laureate, Karen Ovenen, who I am hoping we will feature in our next issue.
Yeah, we're going to be dropping by her place a little bit later this week to sit down and talk a little bit about what a poet laureate does and why it matters, and telling folks a little bit about Karen's story and looking ahead to those programs that are coming down the pipe in April.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. I know libraries might not sound like a rowdy place, but if a library was to be rowdy, it would be the Nederland Library. And the event it sounds like a blast. Saturday, February 21st, 7 to 9:30 p.m. And I think that's what we have for the top of the show today. Here is Toni and Steven talking about the new reissue of Night of the Mannequins.
Thank you so much for agreeing to make some time to chat with me today. I'm excited to dig into Night of the Mannequins. It's a really fun novella, very twisty. But I kind of want to start broad. You've gone from like a cult favorite to being a New York Times bestseller, and even were named one of Obama's summer reads. When did it feel like the center of gravity of your career kind of started to shift?
Yeah, that's a good way to ask that. For me, anyways, it was Mongrels in 2016. That and that was the first book that a new agent I'd started working with had sold for me, and she kind of took control of my career and said, "We're going to do things differently than you've been doing them." And ever since she took control, things have been wildly different.
And what were the things that you kind of started doing differently?
She said, "You've been doing too many books. We need to slow down how many books you're publishing." Because I had 2 or 3 years in the early 2010s where I probably did 3 or 4 books a year. He said, "That's not the way you build a career. The way you build a career is you make each book an event. You don't make it something people can miss." Mongrels was made some noise and got some attention and all, but then the Elegant Indians 4 years later hit in a big way.
Stephen Graham Jones' latest novel, The Only Good Indians, takes us to the Blackfeet Nation in Montana's fertile forests and the undeniable mystery and allure they hold for hunters. This is the backdrop for a stunning horror story where 4 Native American men come face to face with the karmic forces that will exact revenge on them.
Ever since then, it's been a rocket ride, man. It's been fun.
Do you feel like a household name in horror now, or does that still kind of feel strange to you? That's the language that they used in the press release they sent over. So
Oh, how
just
funny! I
curious
didn't know.
how that hit you.
Yeah, I didn't know. I didn't know it was a household name. I'm like a Kirby vacuum cleaner or something. But no, I mean that's an honor, of course. It's also if it's true, it's also a responsibility, you know. And I think anytime you make it to the top of whatever, small mountain in the big mountain chain of life, and anytime you make it to a peak, I think it's your job to not get up there and say, "Wow, I'm great, I made it." The thing to do is to turn around and reach down and see who else you can help pull up, like, and that, I mean, when I say responsibility, that's if I am like inside now, then I've got to let other people in as well.
Definitely. Why did you feel now was the right time to reissue Night of the Mannequins?
It's been 6 years since it has been on the shelves, and it hasn't stopped selling. It hasn't stopped getting read, but that editor who I first worked with on Mongrels, which I said, was kind of what I feel like was the hinge point in my career. Um, she's now at Nightfire, and she is the one who spearheaded this republication of Mapping the Interior and Night of the Mannequin. So it's really nice to get to go back to work with Kelly Lonesome because we met at what I consider such an important time for me.
S You write both full-length novels, novellas, and short stories.
Mhm.
For something like Night of the Mannequin, did it start out as a full-length novel, or was it
Mhm.
always intended to be shorter in scope?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So Mapping the Interior was 2017. Ellen Datlow at Tor.com had edited that, and she's the one who solicited it as well. And so I think it was like in 2018, she called me up and she said, "Hey, Mapping the Interior did pretty good. Do you want to do another novella for us?" And I said, "Sure,"
Mm.
because Mapping the Interior took me 4 days to write, and I looked at my schedule and I thought, I got 4 days. I can write a novella in 4 days again. And so I sat down, banged away on the keyboard, looked up 4 weeks later, and I had not written Night of the Mannequins. I'd written a novel. And I thought, man, that's screwed up. I'm supposed to write a novella. And so I pushed it to the side and I said, all right, time to write Ellen Datlow, that novella. And then I wrote Killer on the Road, and that was also a novel. And I was like, what is going on? Can you not write a novella anymore? You're broken. And so the rule I gave myself was, all right, when you get to 110, 115 pages, you stop. And it doesn't matter what else, that'll be a novella. And so I did that on the third month. And I thought, yeah, I did. I finally was able to write a novella. But then one more line occurred to me that would open it up into a novel. And I called up my agent and I said, "Hey, I wrote this novella for Datlow, but I can turn it into a novel real easy. What should I do?" And my agent BJ, she said, "Go ahead and turn it into a novel. Those are easier to sell." And so I did. I finished it into a novel in like 3 more weeks, and that was the only Indians. And then I told myself, "You really owe Datlow, this novella." And so I sat down and that first line of Night of the Mannequins came to me and I thought I got the title first and I thought I'm gonna write a Night of the Living Dead, but it's gonna be mannequins instead of zombies. And so I
Mhm.
sat down to write it and then Sawyer started talking and I could tell from that first line this was not gonna be that kind of story.
This Sawyer's definitely a bit of an unreliable narrator, to
Mhm.
say the least.
Mhm.
And the Night of the Mannequins definitely differs a little bit from that log line. You kinda think it's about
Mhm.
killer mannequins, but it's really about Sawyer killing his friends because
Mhm.
he's afraid of life after high school, I suppose, moving on,
Yeah.
all these kind of complicated emotions about kind of transition. It sounds like it just kind of started from you just put the pen to paper and Sawyer's voice kind of came out. Can you tell me a
Mhm.
little bit more about how you found that voice and this developed the story?
His voice came so natural, and the story just kept opening up, and I had no idea where it was gonna go. I never know where any of my stuff is gonna go. I'm not an outliner or planner. What do they call it? An architect, I guess. I'm not none of that. I just I just kind of jump on a random animal that's running past and hold on until it throws me.
Yeah. So you grew up in Texas, in
I
Midland.
did. I say Midland because no one knows where I really grew up, but it's 20 miles east of Midland. But Midland was the big town we went to, and in high school, Midland's the town you go to if you want to cruise the drag or get in fights or meet people, all that stuff.
So where did you actually grow up? What's it actually, the area
Place
actually
place
called?
place called Greenwood. It's not. It used to not be on any maps. It could be on the maps now. It's growing and growing with all the oil. But when I was growing up there, it was just we all lived in trailers out in the pastures, and there wasn't a post office. There was one gas station. The school and the church were on the same grounds. So when you're playing kickball in fourth grade and you kick the ball over the fence, you have to elect one of your people to jump the fence and go pick through the cemetery of the church to get your kickball and come back, that kind of place.
Yes. What is it about these kind of Texas towns that feel right for horrors? I guess kind of slash how much of your childhood shows up in Sawyer's world?
A whole lot of my childhood shows up. I mean, Sawyer has like he has a different level of like I guess I would call it affluence. I don't know, than I had growing up.
Sure, yeah.
Like he seems like his family doesn't have to worry about paying rent. Which but as for small town Texas life, I think it is fitted well for horror because one of the main steps in a horror story is how am I going to isolate these people? How am I going to cut them off from
Yeah.
help such that they have to depend on themselves? And when you're doing a small town story, that step becomes less prominent, less important. It's less tricky to do because they're already in a small little town and already no one believes them about anything. I make it sound like it's a strategic decision that I make. To tell you the truth, small towns are just what I know, and so that's what I write.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mhm.
How has your relationship to Night of the Mannequins changed since you first wrote it? And are there any updates being made during this reissue?
I guess the way it's changed is it's trying to become a film right now. And so when I think of Night of the Mannequins, it's hard for me to keep straight which is a novella and which is the feature film, which is the script, which is the novella. And they share certain things, but of course, there are a lot that had to change to become a screenplay. So that's how my relationship has changed.
Are you writing that screenplay as
I did.
well?
I wrote the first version, and then a director that I really like. He came in and added and subtracted. Did like a rewrite on it. Yeah, it's not with a place yet, but it's got interest, and hopefully it happens. I like this director a lot.
Cool. So you live in Boulder and you
Mhm.
teach at CU.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit about that and how being a part of an academic community has changed your writing life at all?
You know, I think I think back to the late '90s before I was a professor. I was working at Sears in the warehouse. I'd get up at 4 in the morning and be there. I think the warehouse opened at 5 and I'd work till noon. And so I'd do that. Then I'd write. And I had a small baby at the time. Well, a normal baby, but he was young at the time. And 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 my wife and I were arranged our work schedules such that we didn't have to do childcare. So one of us could always be home because we couldn't afford childcare. And so I wouldn't get to the keyboard back then until about 10:30 at night, and then I'd have to try to write until about 2 in the morning and then get up at 4 and do it again, and that was I mean, I was young, so I could pull that off, but I think as the years progressed, it would have been easy to not write as much, to say, "I'll write tomorrow. I'll write when I have time." And what being a professor has done for me and continues to do for me is it gives me time to write because I don't have to get up at 4 and go to work. And also, I get to be in rooms with smart people and talk about stories and books, and that keeps my mind firing in a really good way. It feels like a scam, really. It's like if I could design what I want to do with my life, I think a big part of it would be sitting in rooms and talking to smart people about books and writing.
Thinking about the kind of the stories that you tell, have
Mhm.
you always thought of yourself as kind of a horror writer, or do you kind of think of somebody who just a storyteller in general who happens to work with horror elements?
I do consider myself a horror writer. Like I mean, I don't talk about myself a lot in my head, but if I did, I would say you're a horror writer, dude. And I think that's because everything I write, I'll try to do science fiction, fantasy, western. It all kind of hits a slope that at the end of it, it's all bloody. Like it all has at least horror moments in it because that's kind of just what interests me. That's what my proclivities are. But Tell you the truth, I prefer to not have adjectives in front of my name. Like when early in my career, people kept trying to say Stephen's a Native American author, and I would say, no, I'm just a writer. I'm just nothing else. But then I was lucky enough to get the adjective New York Times best-selling, and I thought, oh, that's all right. I can have that one, you know. But anytime that I think you allow the market or the critical establishment to put an adjective in front of your name, then what that does is serve as a handle they can use to pick you up and put you on a shelf and forget about you, you know. So I just want to be a writer.
Definitely.
Mhm.
You mentioned that you kind of have a proclivity for horror. Where
Mhm.
did that come from? Has that always was that something from your childhood?
You know, I think what I like about horror, or the reason I write it, is because it's not for the gore moment, it's not for the spike of terror, it's for that moment just after when you kind of sigh like, "Oh, I'm alive." That feels so good. Like,
Mm,
I've seen night camera recordings of audiences watching scary films. You'll see everyone scream and they jerk and they, spill their popcorn, they grab onto the person beside them, and then, like, 10 seconds later, they sag into their seats and they kinda laugh at themselves. But I think they're smiling to be alive, and that
mm.
little that little that's like a really fast little roller coaster ride, and I think I got addicted to that pretty young, and, I mean, just from life, because that was kinda what my life was. I kept going through these spikes of terror when I was a kid, followed by, "Oh, you made it through somehow." But I got hooked on horror at the end of my, let me think, 7th grade, maybe 8th grade, in junior high anyways. I started running with a group of kids that I was living down in Wimberley, Texas, who, um,
Mhm.
we'd get 6 or 8 slasher films on VHS every Friday night and watch them over and over. It didn't matter if we seen them, or we would watch them and say the lines with the movies, and somehow that communal experience told me, "This is what you wanna do for the rest of your life," you know? You wanna be in this world of, shrieking and laughing and running and smiling and crying.
And so you're in conjunction with this reissue, you're also doing some tours,
Mhm,
over on the West
mhm.
Coast. What are you looking forward to about getting to engage, with the public on Night of the Mannequins?
I'm excited that a whole new batch of people have the might find this book and engage Sawyer. And I guess what I want out of this book for the readers is for people to have that wonderful push pull with the protagonist that we love when we read stories. Like, I don't like what you're doing, but you're pretty endearing, and that's kind of what I was going for with Night of the Mannequins.
Definitely, yeah. It's definitely a love-hate relationship
Hmm.
with
Hmm.
Sawyer. I really enjoyed the book. Thank you so much for your time,
Yeah.
and I hope you have a great time teaching this semester.
Thank you very much. It was wonderful talking with you.
You as well. Have a great one. Bye-bye.
And that's a wrap for today's show. The first clip you heard was from the Texas Public Radio show Book Public with Yvette Benavides, who reviewed The Only Good Indians on air back in 2020. That second clip you heard, the one with all the cries of terror, was a compilation of live audience reactions to Paranormal Activity 2 when it hit theaters back in 2010. Special thanks to Toni for sharing the audio for this interview with us. It's such a pleasure to listen to the twisted mind of Stephen Graham Jones. You can read Toni's feature about Stephen for free at cariboucurrent.com or in this month's print issue. We'll be posting some exclusive video of the interview to our social media too. So make sure you follow at Caribou Current on Instagram and Facebook to catch those when they hit. Once again, we are so excited to share the first issue of Caribou Current with you. It's on racks all over Boulder and Gilpin County. It looks incredible thanks to our amazing design team, and I'm genuinely stunned at how much content we packed into it. So make sure you head out and get your copy today or this month. It'll be on the rack all of February. We'll be running a special Caribou Current episode every single month, just like this one. So if you like today's show, please make sure you like, subscribe, and share it. We are definitely going to need your help to get the word out. As always, we want to hear from you too. tips, thoughts, whatever you want to hear more of, what we're missing, you can get in touch with me at tyler@themountainear.com. This is the Mountaineer Podcast. I'm Tyler Hickman. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
And that's it for our show. Subscribe online to get more access to more news, weekly updates to our community calendar, and a link to our YouTube channel by visiting themountaineer.com. Be sure to use the coupon code PODCAST when subscribing for a 10% discount, only available to our listeners. If you are in the local Peak to Peak area, be sure to pick up a print edition of The Mountaineer at a local business. I'm Dango Rose. Thank you for listening.